So last month I ordered my first ever VR headset, Oculus Quest 2. People do say it's one of the most affordable headset right now, but for a broadcast like me, it was still a pretty difficult decision to purchase one. When my Quest 2 came, I was so excited to play some of the best VR games that I saw other YouTubers were playing. Until I realized they are so freaking expensive. So I decided to make one for myself, from my favorite anime. This is my 1-week journey to creating a Sword Art Online in VR using Unity. Day 0. In order to prepare myself to finish any task given to me in a certain deadline, this is something that must be done every time. I needed to destroy the source of all evil. Good, now I have so much time to work on my game.
Nice.
Day 1, I actually started doing something. One thing that I realized when I first opened up my Unity project was that I didn't own any assets for my game. I was searching for some easy ways to download some 3D models related to Sword Art Online. I either needed to pay for it or make it myself. But if I paid to make my own games, that would defeat the whole purpose of starting this project. So I decided to pick up my Blender skill that was basically non-existent anyway in the first place. I started 3D modeling the monster from Sword Art Online's 74th floor. I loved how in the end, creating the asset for my 3D models was the hardest part of anything in the project. I quickly got a reference image from Google and started 3D modeling the body. This part wasn't too bad as I jumped back and forth between modeling and searching up hotkeys in Blender. My goal was to create something that didn't look like an absolute garbage. Next part of the modeling was the head. I think this was by far the hardest part of 3D modeling for me since I've never modeled anything more complex than this. If anything, I always used to use sphere or a cube for a character's head. But in the end, I feel like I did create something that didn't look too bad. By the end of day 1, I also wanted to model Kirito's sword, Elucidator. I just divided the sword into 3 components, the top part of the sword, the handle, and the blade, and then I connected them together in the end. After I 3D modeled my monster, I needed to rig it in order for me to animate them. I quickly created the armatures of the monster's head, body, arm, and leg, and pressed automatic weight painting in the hopes that it will all work out fine. I ended up weight painting individual armatures to move the bones correctly. I was wondering if I should have made my model into T-pose or something for the automatic weight painting to work. After the models were rotating and moving in the correct relation to the armatures, I created the dope sheets to create a set of animations for the attacks. I texture painted the model and it started to look pretty good until it all crashed and burned. After I modeled the sword and the monster, I started to create other models for the environment. It's now finally time to make a combat system for my game. I coded a sequence of attacks that the enemy is going to perform, but after seeing the sequence of attacks, I thought that it looked kinda boring. So I added a jump animation and a flamethrower particle effect and shoved it inside the enemy's mouth. Now it can shoot fire at us. Nice. Now that I have the enemy movement, it's time to slash at it. So I imported the sword that I created from Blender, added some nice trail effects on it, and created the XR rig and started to implement the collision logic for the attacks. The sequence of attacks are coded in a way that a random attack will be chosen in the public list of attack triggers. In order to get the enemy to avoid getting constantly glitched on knockbacks, I made some animation events in Unity and a flag that gets triggered after a certain delay of time to stop collision events. I used a coroutine for the delays and passed in the anonymous functions to call after a certain delay of time. When I was testing my game, I was actually pretty amazed at how I didn't need to build to my Quest device every time and can just straight out test it on my Unity editor. The only problem was that my Oculus Link cable was super short, so I had to test this in a very uncomfortable position. I then created some flame particle system on the ground that I totally didn't steal from Unity's asset store, and added a little fire shader on the torches that I created in Blender. It's just a simple fire shader on the quad. If you guys are interested in creating this, I made a tutorial, so you can check that out. Once I was finished with most of the particle effects and some gameplays, I then had to learn some more about UI systems for Unity and created the enemy, me, and my waifu's health bar. Well, one problem that I realized while making this UI systems for VR is that it shouldn't actually follow the player's head if you don't want the user to throw up on their headset. So I chose a much easier method of just sticking it on the world space. For the health bar animation, I learned how to mask it so that I can create this fill effect on the bar, which I think was pretty cool. Now I thought I really needed to change the background because we're not in space or anything. For the background walls and ground, I just stole some textures from Pinterest and created the normal map using the normal map generator. And the game instantly started to look pretty playable. Finally, I added some point lights across the game so that I can see some light actions on the torches and the flames. I also added some toon shader on the objects to add a little Zelda or anime style shading. For the final touch, I added some hit effects and damage effects when I slashed the enemy. One feature that I wasn't able to implement is actual death in real life when a player dies. If anyone knows how to implement this, please leave me a suggestion down below. I mean, the quality of my game ended up looking like those 2D retro games, but it was a whole different experience seeing my finished game in virtual reality. And I gotta say, it was super cool and fun building this game. Thank you for watching my video, and don't forget to subscribe for my future game.